everyone. Welcome back. This is the SE Win podcast. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Courtney.
And we are so glad to have you guys back. This time, we are going to start our episode off with a topic that I'm sure many of you have experienced at some point if you are driven in growing a business. We're going to start out with talking about ambition without apology.
Ooh, okay.
And one of the topics I want to talk about is why ambitious women get labeled certain terms. I know one of the terms I have heard is aggressive.
Yes.
I know you mentioned that you've heard that before. Why do you think that ambitious women get labeled some of these terms almost in a sense where it feels negative?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I've heard statements or I've been called things where I hesitated and wasn't sure if this was a compliment or not.
Ooh.
And it kind of catches you a little bit. It's like, is this a compliment or is it not? I'm not sure.
Okay. There's so many places we could go with this right now. My brain is like reeling. Yeah. So I guess to start, I've definitely dealt with my fair share of, honestly, like aggressive or too much or all those things, which is really funny because I'm a very small person. So when people say those things, I'm just like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, especially because I work, you do too, like in a male-dominated industry.
Yeah.
And when you're around a lot of men, a lot of testosterone, it tends to be like you almost have to act that way.
Yeah.
But then sometimes you can come into a room with, depending on the type of women, other women, and it feels very standoffish. I approach everything with the same face, and I've learned that I have to like check myself because I come off very, I guess, to me it's just me, but to other people it's very aggressive and very, like, I got told by my husband the other day, he was like, you walked outside to tell me something, and the person that was also there was like, do I need to leave?
Is she
and I was
okay?
like, why? I was like, what's wrong? And they're like, do you need to talk about something? And I was like, no. Does it look like? And Greg was like, yeah, you had a look. And I was like, really?
You were a woman on a mission.
I wasn't, but that's just my natural state. And I think just the way that I've kind of always, like, that demeanor I've always had, that I've just developed in working in the male-dominated industry, because that's just the way, like, you almost have to be able to, like, hold your own in the room.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard, we heard it last week at a meeting we were at, I've heard a lot of successful women or women that are building businesses talk about how they have RBF.
Yeah.
And most of you know what that means. I don't have to go into detail explaining what that is. But, I am sure that I carry a little bit of that. I haven't been told it because, I naturally smile a lot more than the standard person out there. But yeah. I've heard a lot of successful women that really don't show emotion. They get that label too. And that's not exactly a compliment.
No, 100%. Like, I take it as a compliment these days because I feel like I almost have to, like, just take everything as a compliment. I'm like, oh, thank you. Just because then it throws people off. And I'm like, why is she saying that?
Yeah.
But it's true. But again, you almost have to.
Yeah. And that's where it's like, I really want to get into this because I think this is really, really important. I think a lot of us question ourselves naturally already. I mean, we hold ourselves to this impossible standard that, if we haven't already, we've talked about it, and we're going to talk about that because I think we create an environment for ourselves that makes us feel like we can't fail. And unfortunately, growing a business is you have to fail, but there's that line, between when you walk into a room, you have to show confidence, but where does it start shifting into arrogance for a woman? Because naturally, I don't necessarily think that is something that women naturally carry. I think most of us are pretty humble.
I would
just
agree.
Because we have to juggle all of the things. I don't think any of us thinks that we can naturally do everything all by ourselves.
Yeah.
But I do feel like when you grow a business to a certain size, like, I think anyone can start shifting into that arrogance realm. So I'm kind of curious of, like, where does that start shifting into arrogance? I think and this is something I've told my husband from day one, that if I start expecting people to do business with me just because of who I am or just because of what I built, then that broaches a line of arrogance where I'm no longer grateful for the business that's being brought through the door, but I'm expecting
Ooh.
things from people. For me, that's kind of where I've started to approach the line and say, you know what, okay, if my brain starts shifting in this direction, I need to be humbled.
Yeah.
I need to be grounded. Like we need like I need him to tell me, okay, let me knock you off your pedestal a little bit.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I love first that you set that for yourself, because that is, to me, just says everything like it needs to say about the way you do work, because that just shows that you're like intentional enough to be like, if I feel this way, I can't do that. So I just want to acknowledge, I absolutely love that. I have not thought about this, and I think it's so interesting. I'm sitting here going through my mind thinking about the people who I follow in the business world and I like look up to, both like locally and just like online. And I'm thinking about the people I surround myself with. And I'm sure that they're out there, but I can't think of a woman that I look at and say, oh, they're so arrogant. I can't believe they act that way. And that's such an interesting thing. But I think it goes back to what you were saying about the dynamic of like most women, I think, feel a sense of like, I can do it all, but I don't want to do it all. And I see that from a place of like motherhood, like something that we're shifting in our current household is like, I have more help, I have more support, and I'm able to go out and do all these things and build my business and really develop it into like the career that I always wanted before we started having kids. And God's timing was just like, no, kids are coming first. I know it worked out in his plan, but I'm glad it happened that way because I think it set me up in a way that it needed to be. But I was reflecting on this and I was like, man, I used to do all these things with the kids. Now my business wasn't to the level that it is now because it couldn't be, because I just have to put in more hours to develop like where we're at. But it's so interesting because if I think of a man, and my first thought was like a man in sales. They are arrogant. You almost have to be a little bit arrogant with sales. You do. Because you have to be confident in what you're selling. But yeah, this is so interesting to think about. Like,
you know, one scenario I have seen that has played out in front of me, it wasn't through anyone that I've worked with directly, but I have heard this, and this is something that's interesting to me is, you know, some of us have to have contracts. That's not something that I have in my industry, but some of us have to have contracts because we're providing a service. And there's almost an honor system of like, hey, I'm providing X amount of work for you to work with me X amount of time. And I understand that like there are scenarios where the contract is essential, but also one of the things that I've struggled with is that if someone is unhappy, don't hold them inside a contract they don't want to be in.
No, it just makes it worse.
Exactly. And I have heard people, you know, express concern for being held into contracts that felt just out of arrogance or greed because they had that power and could threaten legal action. I think that really just comes down to like having integrity and understanding that like you're a representation of your business, and how you treat people directly affects how people see that name. And I would never want to hold somebody inside of in a relationship with me just to make myself feel better.
No, and I've had experience, like I have contracts, I deal with contracts in my line of work, and I have noticed like if there's an instance where me and said person need to part ways before the contract terms make sense or whatever, like of course I try to uphold the terms. But at the end of the day, look, if you're not happy and you're angry, you're not going to refer me, you're not going to want to be there, it's going to be miserable to work on your stuff, like there's no point. And I think it's better all around to release it, because the karma honestly that comes with that is not worth it over a little bit of money.
And then my brain would shift to, well, if you feel like you're forced to have those contracts because people are not staying within them, well, I would be asking myself a whole lot of questions about what my ideal client looks like, because that's probably not your ideal client. So maybe I need to be reevaluating or shifting gears a little bit to focus on, okay, who are the people that are going to honor this contract if it's not related to service work and there's
Yeah.
not an issue with my system, if that were me. I think it opens the door for a lot of questions about potential issues inside of the business, you know. But that is a scenario that I've heard of that I wanted to make sure to mention. And
Yeah.
shifting gears just a little bit, because I think this is an important part, and I struggle with this. I struggled with it last week, but you know, there are different generations of people who feel it's taboo to talk about your goals, whether that's financial or business related or money talk. There's so many different generations that feel differently about this.
Yeah.
And so what are your thoughts about owning goals and talking about your goals publicly when it comes to being an ambitious woman in business?
I'm all for it. I'm a big proponent of, if you don't put it out there and hold yourself accountable, how are you going to even do it? And so, like, I don't always put our specific revenue goal out there, like, for the public, but I mentioned things like, you know, last year we hit a wonderful milestone in our business, and I originally wanted to double that revenue number, and my husband said, no, I want you to triple it. And so that became our new revenue goal, and we're already halfway there. And like, I put that out there, and I talk about that with people. I mean, not just everyone, but you know, like specific conversations with people, and I put it out there on social media and various pieces, because I think if I saw someone else who was a mom who I saw build a business and do it in a way, and like she's like, yeah, we had this goal, and then we set this goal, and we got to here, and blah blah. Like, that's inspiring to me more than it is like, I can't believe you would say that.
Yeah.
And like, if people ask me the number, like, I will tell them.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to be like, I'm not going to tell you how much money we want to make. I don't know. I just think that that's like, it does go back to the generations of like, oh, don't talk about money. Don't tell people how much you make. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why
it's
not?
Inspiring.
Yeah.
It really is. And I am lucky enough to be able to, because I'm having already financial conversations with people, I'm lucky enough to be able to be in a situation where I could ask those questions and be like, hey, you know, okay, this is your financial goal for the year, or this is your revenue in last year. How is that going to change? But I have found myself even feeling guilty about talking about my goals, but then talking about my successes as I'm trying to work towards my goal, because I don't want to feel like I'm bragging. Because I know that different. I remember being that woman that was just starting out, and how seeing someone else succeed was inspiring, but also a reminder that I was not at that time, because it wasn't my time yet.
Yeah.
And I still had so much more work to do. So I'm very mindful of how others might feel.
Okay.
But at the same time, I agree with you. I think the more that you talk about it in a circle of people that are going to hold you accountable, then how else are you going to have accountability partners to get it done? You know, how many people do you have asking about your goals, right? Obviously, we have family. We have a husband or a spouse that's involved in the business, or family or business partners, whoever, that are asking us. But outside of that, who else is keeping you in check? Who else is asking, is this meeting, or are these coffee dates that you're having, are these revenue producing conversations?
Yeah, is it worth your time?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've intentionally set up like circles to have that, both locally and like friends that I've met, that like, we just need like that person every once in a while to keep us in check and like hold ourselves to what we say we're going to do, because we know, like, if not, it's easy for us to just kind of shrink back down and get comfortable. And I'm not trying to be comfortable. Like, I want to push myself and to grow. And I feel like I'm actually, you know, my husband talked about this recently. He talks about it all the time with me, but he talked about it publicly recently, about like, if you get too comfortable and you don't push to growth, everything in your life becomes stagnant. But when you're pushing in all areas of your life to be ambitious, not just your business goals, but like in your marriage and in your family and in your places that you volunteer and in your church and all these, if you're really pushing to be the best you can be in all of those, everything levels up. Whereas most people assume that, oh, well, if my business is doing great, then all these things are going to suffer. It's not true. You just have to know, you know, we've talked about balance. It's not about the balancing. You have to know where your attention is and putting your all into that time and attention for that. And I can honestly say that in the last 6 months, when we really dove heavy and I'm growing our business, and like the things that are happening, they're happening because I'm putting in the work and I am trying to grow and I have these huge goals. But if I didn't have the goals, all these things wouldn't happen, and I wouldn't have some of the circle of friends that I have, and like the people to lift each other up and like hold each other accountable, and I wouldn't be able to enjoy the time I have with my kids as much, I feel like, because I'd be like, well, I could be working, or oh, we're doing okay on revenue, but just it all flows.
Yeah, and I have a couple more questions related to this topic, but both of these are really, really good. And I'll keep this part brief. I know we've all heard the saying of shrinking to fit others, right? You know, I think we all are going to come across people who don't want to see us succeed.
Yeah.
And what is your take on shrinking to fit what others want for you, that box that others may want to put you in? What's your take on that?
I am probably not like the typical woman in this area. I'm like, just cut them off and let them go. Like, I do not care. I also am not as emotional. I'm very much like if it doesn't serve me, and not in like a vanity type way, if it's not serving me, it's not serving my life, it's not serving my family, like literally, see you later, bye. I unfriend people, I unfollow people, I stop talking to people all the time because they're just not serving me, and my energy and time is the one thing that I have to protect because I can't get it back. And I'm not going to let you ruin that because you don't think I can succeed, or you want me to do less because it would serve you better.
And I have to agree with you on this. This is not something that came naturally to me. I've told you before, and you guys will hear me say it over and over again. I'm a recovering people pleaser. It is my natural instinct to people please, and I think that's because of the example that I've seen other people in my life, and I've had to unlearn that. But I will say that is not an arrogant thing, by the way. It is not a shameful thing to remove people from your life that aren't supporting you. That doesn't mean that you get rid of everyone who doesn't agree with you. I think having different opinions around you that don't agree with you and challenge you is very important. But is this person supportive of me, or are they tearing me down? Are they trying to put me into a box, or do I have to shrink in order to make them feel uncomfortable? And no, I completely agree with you. I think the best thing that I've ever done is just remove myself from that situation, deal with whatever pushback or flashback comes, and it'll eventually move on. But leading into the last question for this subject in particular, what is your take on, all of these things that we talked about, the ambition piece and modeling what it looks like to grow a business, or what it looks like to be a woman in business for your daughter? Yeah, because as most of you will learn already, if you don't already know, I'm not fortunate enough to be a mom yet. I look forward to it, but I'm going to really lean on this one for you because I think it's hard. I mean, obviously, parents want to be with their children. But there's still a piece of it where they are looking at you for this. I know how much I can remember watching my mom and a lot of the stuff that I've learned from her. I've had to either unlearn or keep some of it. I think all of us do that. But what is your take on
that? Is good. So I approach it from the first part of it is like, who do I want my daughter to see, and who do I want them to like be an example, and am I exuding that? So one example of that is I stopped wearing a two-piece bathing suit, and this flows. I'll get to it. Because who am I to tell them that they can't wear a two-piece bathing suit if I am? And so I completely was like, okay, well, that means that I need to now wear more modest like bathing suits. And it's nothing I ever really thought of before because I just wasn't ingrained with that. So I think of it from those little pieces of like, what am I saying around them, and how am I talking about myself and the things that I'm doing? Like, I never talk negatively about anything. We all have things that we're not super confident in with ourselves and things, and I never once have let my children hear any of those things because I don't want them to look at themselves in that way. And that all flows into, from the business side of it, they know like mommy is working and mommy loves what she does, and mommy is working to help provide a better life for us. And they don't fully understand what that means, but they're like, well, why do you have to work? They just learned they have to like pay for your house, And like you have
Oh.
things that like you don't just get money, like you have to work for the money.
Okay.
So that concept has finally clicked, at least for my older two kids. So like my oldest daughter, she's like, oh, okay, like I want to work, I want to earn money. And my 4-year-old daughter is like, whatever, she doesn't care about anything. But it's a really I want to show them that you can go after the things you want and you can pursue your dreams, because if you don't, like, if I look back at who I was 3 years ago, when that's kind of when I said I'm going to take a step back from business, I'm really going to pour into my kids, and I'm going to just like see how that goes, like just the stay-at-home mom route. And I don't say that, like, I hate when I use that term, like just the stay-at-home mom, because being a stay-at-home parent in any capacity is the hardest job I've ever done, and nothing will compare to that. And I will preach that from the mountains. And my husband can now speak on it because he's been doing a lot of that lately, and so it really is the most difficult thing. So if you are a stay-at-home mom and you're looking to pursue a career, please know that like what you do is so honorable and it's amazing. But with that, I was probably the most miserable I'd ever been, because I wasn't pouring into myself and the passions that I have, which lie in what I do for my work. And clients tell me all the time, like, you really love what you do, don't you? And I'm like, I do. Like, I get so excited about it. And if I didn't have that excitement to pour into myself, then when I'm home and when I'm doing things with my kids, like, you can tell. And I can just see a huge difference in who I am and how my personality is now versus 3 years ago, because I felt lost. And I don't want them to see that, like, there's not more out there for them. Like, there really is something that you can do and you can pursue. And our older two kids, like, they're dying to like earn money, and they want to, what do they call it? It's not like work a job, but basically like they want to start like a small business of some kind. But they're like, let's sell lemonade, or let's make crafts and sell them. And we live in the back corner of a neighborhood, so like there's no traffic. And I'm just like, y'all, like, this isn't conducive to what you want. Mommy and daddy are gonna find a way for you to like earn money and like work a job, because that's all they want. So we're literally in the works of it right now. Like, this is a conversation we have every day.
I cannot wait to hear what that update is, what you choose to do, because I'm sure that you will inspire many others that may be getting the same questions, if not yet, very soon. To do that. I know one of the things that I want to mention that I think is really, really cool is so many of the conversations that I had with my mom is, she grew a business really from the ground up but I mean, she came into a business, she worked her way up as high as she could go without having a degree. Because in her time, that you were limited in how far you could go based on your college education. And I just think it's so cool to speak to so much of what women can do now without even having to have a college degree. There's so much opportunity for women and flexibility to build businesses from home.
Oh my gosh.
Even for her, she had to show up every day in pantsuit. I mean, it's pretty incredible when you think about that generation versus now. I mean, it's wild. So I think that's a testament to not only how much our world has changed, but it's just showing how much opportunity there is where, no matter what stage you are, whether you're still in the I'm gathering ideas, or I have this feeling I need to start something, or whether you're in the build of it, the thick of it, and you were like, what in the heck am I doing? This feels like insanity. No matter what stage or season you're in, there you can always be a model for others, whether that's your daughter or whether that's someone else. You can, and always just choose to build other people up and not be that person that someone feels they have to shrink to make you happy. Well, this was good. This was really good. Thank you guys for joining us today for this episode. I hope some of the things we talked about was at least one nugget for you today that was helpful. And please stay tuned for future episodes, and we look forward to having it again.